Okay, well, I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight on this Zoom town hall. We Can Lead Change is going to be talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion in education. And specifically, we're going to talk about the culturally responsive teaching standards in Illinois. There has been some misinformation about these, so we'd like to give you an overview to clear that up, and then talk a little bit about the implementation and successes that schools have already been choosing to do these culturally responsive standards. And so to give you some really good information about this, and to be supportive of candidates who also support equity in the schools. Tonight, joining us as presenters in the town hall, we're going to have Dr. Raquel Wilson, Adriana Barriga Green, and Professor Joyce Fountain. The format tonight will be a town hall. We'll start with Dr. Wilson giving us the overview and implementation and successes. And then we're going to move on to a question answer period for 5 minutes. So in that question answer period, if you do have a question, could you please place it in the chat? We won't be asking any questions directly. Then we're going to move on to the Elgin Community College Board of Trustee candidates, which are again, Adriana Barriga Green and Professor Joyce Fountain. And we'll be taking a 20-minute question answer session with them. Again, please place those questions in the chat. And we'll follow up with a call to action. So thank you again for joining us. And I also want to thank Brenda Engelhardt, Dawn DeLong Lutz, Ellen Jo Young, and Sue Sanders for helping to put this town hall together tonight. So Susan Sanders, could you please introduce
Yes, with pleasure. So for over 25 years, Dr. Raquel Y. Wilson has had the opportunity to serve as an educator at many levels, first at the junior high and high school levels, and later within the Department of Juvenile Justice. After obtaining a master's in educational leadership and a doctorate in education from Aurora University, she has showcased her leadership as a high school administrator and central office director, overseeing a wide range of programs designed to benefit all learners. Currently, she serves in a combined role as Assistant Director of Student Services and Equity in District 87. Her passion to eradicate racism, fight for all students to have an equitable learning environment, and brave spaces that foster excellence and prosperity. With an unwavering tenacity to change the trajectory for students, she works to advance educational equity every day. Raquel is a current member and past conference presenter with the Illinois Principals Association, ASCD Conference co-presenter, annual Glenn Bard series speaker, as well as an active participant in the DuPage County ROE Equity and Excellence Committee. She is a courageous conversations affiliate practitioner and recent certified trainer of Extreme Teachers Program. And personally, I have been a part of the Glenn Bard Equity Program for the past 10 years, Raquel being my boss for most of that time. And she walks the walk. Each year, the equity program has grown under her guidance. And in this very difficult pandemic year, she took it to a deeper level by focusing on hearing the students' voices by creating a very safe space to talk. And it's my honor to have Raquel tell us about culturally responsive teaching standards.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Sue, you were supposed to read like 2 lines of that. I gave you full license to cut. Thank you all so much. I appreciate anytime I have the opportunity to be among like-minded folks and educators and those pursuing opportunities that create and that create opportunities and access for students and remove and dismantle barriers. I am the daughter of Kitty, who is the daughter of Lena, who is the daughter of Hetty, and I stand on the shoulders of my ancestors. And I come to you today to really just kind of have a conversation about the culturally relevant teaching standards and what that can look like in colleges, because it's there also, but there's a lot of great culturally responsive work that's happening in schools that I believe a lot of teachers are implementing and doing because it's what's best. So I just really want to have a conversation. Obviously, the state put out a pretty expansive, about a 52-page document, and having gone through some of that, listening to different presentations about the standards, the number one thing for me as a Black woman, I'm like, wow, this is affirming. This, for there to be specific language I know Sue was mentioning some of the educators or, retired educators in our education prep programs. There was nothing in there unless, about how to, be intentional with, students of color, historically, what pieces look like, even thinking about the large major decision in education, which was Brown versus the Board of Education, and how that legacy has a direct link to the shortage of Black and Brown teachers in our system. Because, right, if Black students are going to go into white schools, where did all those Black administrators, teachers, where do they go? And so when you don't have that legacy, my mom was a teacher, my grandma was a teacher. If you don't have that legacy in front of you, then that tends to, be part of the marginalization and, really historic erasure of our Black and Brown, some of that heritage and that history. So with the culturally responsive teaching standards, right? So anytime you have standards in regards to what we should be teaching and what that looks like, they kind of break them up in a few areas. And so number one, I just kind of do the kind of a broad, because there's a lot, honestly. So just to be able to have a conversation is really, where I want to go with this. So looking at self-awareness and relationship to others, that culturally responsive teachers and leaders are responsive and reflective, and they gain an understanding of themselves and how that impacts others, so that it can lead to a more cohesive and productive student development. Anytime you're looking at curricula, anytime you're going to be teaching that, right, your culture and your pedagogy go together hand in hand. I can't take off any part of my culture and expect that I'm going to be able to do a really fine job at what I am, whether I'm speaking, teaching, or learning. And so one of the very first pieces of that, and it also, ties in very well to the social emotional learning standards as well, with self-aware. Who am I? And having a deep sense of self, looking at what's my racial literacy for me in order to know whose history, is being served, and then who came before me, so that I can honor that as well as we moving into the future. The next piece, systems of oppression, that CRT teachers and leaders understand that there are systems in our society, especially but not limited to schools, and schools that create, reinforce, that perpetuate a lot of the structural racism, inequities, right? You don't have to go all the way to Chicago to look at redlining. You can look at where particular neighborhoods are, who is served in those neighborhoods and who's not served, right? So thinking about, what are those systems, and even, right, as you become a conscious observer, or like I, like to ask my students to be a healthy skeptic. Who's missing from this conversation? Who's not here, and I wonder why. I would be remiss if I did not mention our brothers and sisters of the Asian diaspora that are, my heart is so heavy with them. And this is the work that the oppression, the eliminating barriers, and, really calling racism for what it is, right? That police chief can think that person who murdered those folks or allegedly murdered them, he was having a, I don't know about that. That's one heck of a bad day. But I digress. So just wanted to make sure I mentioned our brothers and sisters there, and we are with them. Students as individuals is another piece. So CRT teachers and leaders view and value students as individuals within the context of families and communities. Being able to ask students, right? Students bring a lot of cultural capital. Every student does. But which students get to lean into that cultural capital and thrive in an organization and in an educational system, and which students get to barely hang on? There's always something going on. They're, barely, just kind of scraping to survive. And we all know, if a lot of educators on here, the research about what, trauma-informed care and working with particular students who, if you're in a heightened state of trauma all the time, if there's always something, heightened state, anxiety, learning is not happening, nor is the prospect for the future of thinking about, well, if you just do this now, in 4 years, you're going to go to college. If you just, and it's like, I'm living day to day. I'm living for right now. And I believe that will allow teachers in the classroom to slow down a little bit. I believe one of the silver linings from COVID has been being able to take off a lot of those layers that over time, we think we have to teach this, we have to like this, we have to, these are what they call, those things we have to. And it's like, well, I think essentially, here's what we have, and even, I implore, teachers and schools as we're returning, as many are returning, to not take that big heap of stuff that you kind of threw off to the side and bring it back. Right? Our schools have to be that soft place for students to land. It has to be hope and healing, because that's what's going to get us through the pandemic. And I want them to know how much I care after the pandemic. In 3, 5, 6 years, I want to know there was someone that cared about me during the pandemic. And I now that we're a little bit removed, I can remember it. Right. So we're going to have there's another 12 years of students before, even pre-K students, right? You got little ones doing Zooms and, on a tablet and whatnot. So, that care and that concern for what students bring to, what they bring to the classroom and what they know. Because I think sometimes as educators, we do our best work when we're truly a facilitator. And we allow students and we really amplify their voice and allow them to really have a say. And that kind of rolled me into the next one, where it talks about students as co-creators, right? How powerful is the opportunity for students to be co-creators and to have that, I feel, that organic practice, right? We want to increase our pipeline. We want there to be more teachers across all ethnicities, cultures, races. However, if students get a chance to try that, right, then I believe that will give them a sense of being able to, like, oh, I can do this. I have one of my teachers, his sophomore year teacher allowed him to be kind of that student helper. And it was one of those things where, because of the system wouldn't let the student transfer into a higher level math, the student who is now a teacher, had to stay in that lower level math, but the teacher, he blew the teacher away with what he knew. And every assessment was, he was correcting things that the teacher had missed. And so he leveraged that. And so instead of him being a new teacher, when I first met him, he said, oh, I've been teaching for 7 years. I just only have 1 year in TRS, you know? So that was just his way of, you know, of coming, you know, full circle and taking what the system limitations were and really making that, you know, an opportunity for him to pursue teaching. That is also another piece, right? Leveraging student advocacy. It always sometimes when students, you know, they may tell us things or they may have ideas. I believe in normalizing the student voice. When students want to talk, which is all the time, right? We've all, you know a student or you've been with a group of students, and I mean, they could talk and there are several paths they could go on except the lesson, right? And so how are we helping students not only build their own healthy racial identity, saying, you know, honoring what they come to school with, because I guarantee you every single family sends us their best. I've never met a family that said, he's mediocre, but take him. No, every family is sending us their best. And for me, absolutely, that's the vein in which we work, and I want to take care of the best. Somebody sending me a Mercedes or a Maybach, I'm not probably just going to put the regular gas in it. I'm going to probably put the premium stuff, you know, right? You take care of those really, really great things. You know, one of the other pieces in leveraging student advocacy is creating that risk taking. We all know, we're like, well, can I do this? And we, you know, as adults have enough experience to think about what is going to be the risk reward. And so building that in for students is super important. And I'll talk about this one, and then we'll just kind of go into questions, because I know you all have a good meeting, and I just appreciate the opportunity to be here. The last one, right? That family and community collaboration. That CRT teachers and leaders will partner with families and community to build rapport, form collaborative and mutual relationships, and engage in effective cross-cultural communication. I really wanted to, bring this one up, because it's not just about, right? It's not about the, you know, oh, we're going to have a multicultural potluck, we're going to do this, right? We're talking the sustaining practices in culture are things that happen organically, things that happen over time, and also, right, is about that voice. Are we only hearing from our families when there's an issue? Are our families okay to, when we send a survey out, or are they going to answer it because they really feel like we're going to take what they say as part of a larger decision? Or is it just, well, they're not going to listen to me anyway, so why do it? You know, so, and sometimes when you have historically and traditionally marginalized groups of people, sometimes you see that survey. I've done it myself, and I'm in education. I'm like, ooh, that's a 25 question survey. So I'm going to do the survey, or we're going to do Culver's night, or my kids are going to get a bath. I'm doing one, we're not doing all three. Okay. So sometimes, you have to make some of those choices. But I think, again, another silver lining to the pandemic, being able to help re-engage parents in regards to, right, they were the first teachers anyway. We just happened to come along and take a little shared custody. And then when it was, more back into the family, helping us with, all the different subjects, we really needed to be as gracious and as helpful as possible and saying, okay, you know what? I see that, the work is, I believe that your child is understanding the work. It looks like you all have a good plan. If you have a good plan, I will reach out to you on Tuesday and Friday. And if something is not working the way you need, let us figure out a schedule and let's see what works. Because school's open from 7 to 3, but that family might really need something from 6 to 8. So how do we make that, how do we really make that work? And so those are some of the few things that, the college students will be learning as the standards, again, begin to get, synthesized a little bit more, put together. And obviously, there's time for that to be rolled out into education programs, in Illinois, which I think is just fantastic. So questions.
So I see one, and I'm not the facilitator here, but I saw Antoinette mention the power of a facilitator is such a relevant consideration for all learning levels. And she was just probably making a comment.
Right.
Jackie, I know you're in charge, so why don't you?
Yeah. So we have, the first question is this only for college students?
Yeah, the way that it was written was so that it would have time to be integrated into colleges and universities, into education programs, and to have a little bit more dialogue about what that will also look like. And I think that was because you hear standards and you hear Illinois State Board, it automatically teachers in 5 years, boom. But in reality, right, as and there's some schools that have some fabulous, social justice minded, and that's their lens that they prepare new teachers. So there are some schools who are doing that work, but in 4 or 5 years, we're also going to have, I feel like this is also a way to recruit students as well, saying, okay, I'm going to be able to, be affirmed in additional learning. I'm going to be able to then, be able to enter into a program and be able to have some of these outcomes that are truly important to me. Because in 2024, 25, I mean, we're going to be under, there's a whole new landscape as that much time continues to pass.
So if so, then why are parents so upset about what's going on in their public schools?
Sure. I think parents can be our biggest advocates, and our parents can be, our biggest critics about what's happening next. And I think that for some of the parents that I have had a chance to talk to and say, hey, I'm not really sure about this. And it's about maintaining, anytime there's change, sometimes why are we changing? It worked for me. It should work for you. It should work for them, and on down the line. But right, as I know that, several people have quoted this: when you know better, you should do better. Not just know better, do better, but you should. And so we owe it to, I believe our students, our current students, and as we look towards this, legacy of rich knowledge, I know that when families have an opportunity to see what this looks like, to hear a little bit more, similar to venues like this, and there's always going to be that. I don't ever want to change someone's mind. I would just love to have a conversation and offer a different approach. And so if I was attending college, going into teaching, and this was part of my curriculum, wow, this would be very affirming to me. Imagine how much more I would be able to do. And if I can be authentic in my teaching from year one, just think about how much, I can offer students.
So, Dr. Wilson, have you been implementing these within the school that you've been working within?
One of the things I think is kind of tricky about implementing when you're talking about people doing the work. I have for a long time had a lens towards equity and removing barriers and ensuring that students have access to whatever opportunities and that are out there. So as far as a standard, I do particularly, we're using the current Illinois standards, but I also ensure that, for instance, in a course that we teach in Glenbard called Modern Issues, right? Well, that's in the social science area, and there's no way that you're going to be able to talk about modern issues without having some historical perspectives and some real historical perspectives versus what's always been taught. But you got to kind of turn that on its head a little bit and say, why is this? Why is this the actual, this learning standard, right? There's a learning standard in social science that talks about the American way. Well, is that geared towards one group of students and alienating another? So I believe in a staff who looks at things very critically and has that very critical lens and knows we have a short amount of time with students, and that students are to be affirmed. They belong day one when they step in that door. And their success is directly tied to our success. And so we absolutely, I want, I kind of had, this group of kids that were like, I don't care about the pandemic. I'm coming to school. I'll wear 5 masks. I just want to be, I just want to be around you. I want to be in the building, and I just attribute that to because they belong, they succeed. And so teaching, some of that stuff is hard. It's hard not to teach, but kids know that culturally they have a home where I am.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you so much, Dr. Wilson, for joining us this evening and giving this valuable information to us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Sue, you're the best. I got to take off, you all. Have a great meeting.
Thank you. So for the remainder of the evening, I'd like to introduce Adriana Barriga Green and Professor Joyce Fountain. They are both running for Elgin Community College Board of Trustees. They're running together as a team. And I would first like to say that Adriana is a daughter of immigrant parents. And with her professional background, she brings important perspectives into the lives of richly diverse Elgin Community College students. She is a 20-year dual language teacher within U46 and has a background in international business. She is an ICEOP King Chavez Parks Fellowship recipient, an Elgin Leadership Academy Fellow, and has created the Elgin Area Volunteer Guide, which provides internship opportunities for local teams. Professor Joyce Fountain. She brings educational expertise, renowned leadership experience, and a deep knowledge of diversity and equity. Her role as professor in the U46 board of directors, Joyce has connected with hundreds of students throughout the years. So I want to thank these women for joining us tonight. I know how busy it is and how hard it is to run for a position, and I really appreciate the time that you are taking tonight to be with us. So we'd like to start with some questions, and Dawn Lutz is going to be starting with some questions for these two candidates. Thank you, Dawn.
All right, ladies, answer as you wish. Either one of you can answer. What is the first issue that you would like ECC's board to address to help all students feel safe, heard, and not marginalized?
Well, I'll start, and my colleague can certainly add more too. I guess one of the things that I, excuse me, one of the things that I think about is the speaker just mentioned that if students feel that they belong, they are inclined to have a better experience. And that experience covers a number of arenas. It covers their academic achievement, it covers their social achievement, and so many others. And so I think that just being a part of and knowing that they belong, I think all of us can relate to that. I'm very comfortable. I'm more inclined to participate and listen more carefully, ask more questions than if I, for whatever reason, feel uncomfortable. I'm more likely to just sit and listen and kind of look at my watch. and so again, I think if we really focus on students and their needs, that students will have a greater outcome, and they will also, during that process, have an opportunity to see who they are. Because often in an open environment, they, as they participate, and then they walk out of the classroom, you know, they give each other a high five. Man, we did it today. And that builds, again, it builds their confidence and gives them a greater likelihood to try something else.
And I think that belonging is, you know, so important. And I think students will feel comfortable and like they belong if the school is pretty much meeting them where they're at, listening to the students, knowing our students, identifying the barriers that they have to success by asking them, you know, they know best, and kind of really working towards removing those barriers so that they can reach their educational goals. Even where, like right now at ECC, programs and wonderful programs and funding is available for students. And many students in our community are unaware. You know, the students that need it most are unaware of these opportunities and not able to take advantage of them. Post-pandemic, ECC has lost about, I think it's like 10 to 14% of the students, you know, mostly students of color. And there's not really a plan on how to bring them back. And so that would be an immediate priority. Many of the ECC students, you know, at our school are the first in their family to attend college here in the US, like I was. Many of them also care for dependents at home. A majority of them have a significant need for financial aid. Fallout from the COVID pandemic just made that worse. So it's just created additional challenges. There's been loss of family members, loss of income, increased food and housing insecurity, and a greater need for mental health services. So, you know, I would like to see, you know, enhanced services and outreach for our students, both trying to get them back into the college. You know, we even, Joyce and I, when we were canvassing, we met a student, you know, just knocking on doors. Well, actually, we weren't knocking on doors. We were just dropping lit, but they happened to have their garage open. So we were talking to them, and this is a student who dropped out because of, you know, financial issues, you know, during this time of COVID, and had no idea that there was funds and scholarships and grants available that she could go back, you know, so we gave her that information. Also, you know, I just know from, you know, myself and my own, you know, my own kids, my daughter's actually here helping me with the campaign. She was job hunting in Baltimore, but she, you know, a lot of the students are dealing with a lot of mental health issues, you know, because of the fallout from COVID and the isolation and just so many things. And I think we're going to need to provide mental health services for these students. I believe ECC right now, the students can get 2 or 3 counseling sessions, and then they're referred out somewhere in the community. If they don't have insurance, the waiting list could be 4 or 5 months. That's unacceptable. You know, you just, if you need counseling, you need counseling. So that's something that I think the ECC is going to have to look at. And then I think sorry.
Let's go on to the next question, and maybe it'll go in with what you were going to say. All right. Thank you very much. St. Charles is meeting with resistance to incorporating that deep equity training. So what are the best strategies, do both of you think, that address that teaching, the idea of teaching tolerance? And we do have 2 minutes each, so.
Okay.
Okay, Adriana, are you going or shall I?
You could go first.
Oh, I love that respect for my age. Yeah. Got me. Go ahead, because you got me off track. Go ahead.
Sure. Well, the Deep Equity Initiative, it helps schools to eliminate and lessen the achievement gaps, disparities in graduation rates, and, disproportional suspensions, referrals, expulsions, and disciplinary rates with our students, right? But, our students are strengthened when all the students in the community are successful and they have opportunities for education that result in, eventually in good paying jobs, hopefully union jobs, and they can provide skilled labor for local institutions. And, successful students with good paying jobs, they support our area businesses, home sales, they boost our local economies. So increasing the success rates for all our students, it's a win-win for our communities.
Joyce?
I will only add to that, having a successful, reliable position that meets your family needs is a goal for all of us. And for some individuals, it's more difficult than others. And some of that is the result of personal challenges, family issues, that kind of thing. But when our institutions are part of those barriers, that's unacceptable. And that's where we have to hold institutions accountable. I don't know about many other community colleges, but Elgin Community College is doing very well for itself. And again, I give credit for those who have been tending those funds and resources, but it's not enough just to hold on to them. The goal is to improve people's lives through learning, and that means allowing them to take advantage of those resources.
Excellent. Thank you very much, both of you. All right, number 3. Are there specific curricular resource materials that you would like to see changed based on the diversity of the school?
So,
go ahead.
It's like I don't know who's going first here. It's okay. I think that complex problems that affect us all, like climate change, have and will continue to disproportionately impact communities of color and low income and social minority groups. Our curricula currently doesn't prepare students to reckon with complex challenges that they'll face in every sector of the economy, and less so for those that are going to be directly harmed, and they're likely to have the least access to resources to address those issues. And, we all need to be part of solutions that are community-based, not top-down approaches, where the decision-making is not, inclusive, equitable, or diverse. And I think having inclusion and having a voice at the table is going to help the college.
Joyce?
I agree.
Thank you. Okay. All right, the next question then. Let's see. How can we, do you have a specific plan for anti-racism professional development and training for the professors at ECC?
I do not have a specific plan, and part of that is academic freedom, and part of that is in order for us to be in order for us to even be able to explore this, it has to be something that the administration supports and will help negotiate not only the resources and the development, but also finding the resources. We find money for things that we believe to be important. And we don't, and that gives us the other perspective. There is often something said that with educators, you can't direct them into anything. All of our employee groups do have contracts that we have to contend with. But I must say, certainly not completely, but we have a lot of good folks on our campus, both faculty members and staff, who are committed, who have seen the light and would make accommodations, try to get that new learning, help their institution move forward in that arena.
You know, I think it's important to provide diversity training focused on themes like, you know, the Latinx student experience, the African American student experience, the LGBTQI student experience. And I think it would provide employees just a unique opportunity to learn and discuss important topics related to diversity and inclusion and have those important conversations. Talking about things like unconscious bias, which we all have, the veteran experience, student success as it relates to, you know, different student groups. You know, we do have a disparity. You know, the Latinx students are not as successful as the white students. The African American students are way less successful, you know, and the data shows it. And we need to, you know, we need to address those issues. And so thinking about how we teach, I think, is important. I think workshops could be offered to engage colleagues in conversations around, you know, concepts like inclusive, exclusive behaviors, bias, privilege, and unintended impacts of communication styles. You know, and again, I think, you know, having enhanced advising and mentoring for our Black and Brown students, you know, is going to be really important. You know, ideally for the students who are least successful, so let's say our African American students, having a one-on-one mentor that follows them from day one until they successfully complete, and even after, until they find, you know, a job in their field. So I think those connections are important. You know, like Professor Fountain was saying, you know, there's nothing like a mentor and having somebody have, you know, knowing that somebody cares about you. And, you know, that's kind of an ongoing theme here, but I think that's important for the students.
Excellent. Thank you. Number 5, how can we assure that the classrooms of ECC are welcoming to all students? You talked about feeling safe, heard, and not marginalized, but how are they welcoming to all students?
Well, I'll start you off. Very often, to get desired behaviors, understand that all of the employee groups are under contract. And the contract doesn't say you have to be welcoming to all students that show up. And so that's that, and there's academic freedom and all those kinds of things. Though I also have seen folks that at one point were very anti being told anything, but I believe there's always more than one way to achieve a goal. And so put me in a room and tell me I'm learning now, not so much, but seeing colleagues become engaged, to hear those conversations that colleagues are now having with others, those are ways that we can encourage others. I have certainly grown a lot personally because I've been a person that said, oh, this is what we need, let's go and get it done, and here we go. I've had to learn. It just doesn't work that way. And those kinds of things, if it were going to be anything that resembled a mandate, would have to be part of negotiation of unions. Unless we do something very creative, which is enticing. And we know that food often works.
Adriana?
So I think I was just taking some notes. There's a lot of things that, that could be done. Normalizing alternative pronoun use, ensuring students are not misgendered, having culturally aware professors that recognize, respect, and respond to the difference of accessibility needs, things like that. Also having an open door policy, effective responses to Title IX complaints and safety concerns of students is important. Establish a committee for on-campus police accountability that includes students. Undocumented safety plans For our undocumented students, I know just today, you know, someone was picked up less than a mile from here by ICE, you know, in an unmarked vehicle. And so the rapid response team were dealing with that, you know, that family and trying to help them out. And this person is now detained in McHenry at the ICE facility, which should be closed. You know, so having a, you know, like a safety plan for them, and having professors trained on how to interact with organizations like ICE and knowing the rights of the students, the undocumented students. And I think there's more options to include, but that just gives an idea of the kind of changes that we already know could make students feel safer and more welcome in their school and in their classrooms.
Excellent. Thank you both. The last question, until other questions from the chat, is, in times of racial tension, how do we unify the ECC student body?
Well, my first reaction to that is that often the challenges aren't between students. It's those older, wise people who know better. And we set up structures that sometimes are helpful and sometimes not. Even our students who are on campus, they see patterns. They see how one group is responded to versus another group, those kinds of things. And so nothing is going to be successfully changed unless there is a cohesiveness between all parties involved. And the truth of the matter is that students know more about their needs than we do. And so instead of dictating, we need to have authentic conversations with larger groups of students. There is a student group of leadership, and there is a student member of the board who attends all of their meetings, but that's not sufficient. And students are not often welcome to come and participate in something like that, though there are annual forms that have to be submitted to educational institutions. And so we send out this form to them and ask them to hurry up and get it back to us. But I think most of us know face-to-face creates options and opportunities that passing notes or doing something very formal could never achieve.
Thank you. All right, Adriana, want to say the last one?
Yeah, I think just cultivating a culture of curiosity to investigate and, you know, and cope with realities of difference across racial lines and experience. Citizenship within the ECC community and a shared identity is important. I know we're fortunate in the Elgin area that, you know, our community really embraces the strength and the treasure that is our diversity and the rich cultural heritage that we have in this area, in the ECC 509 district. And I think just, you know, really supporting that at the college is important. And, you know, also being proactive in diversifying, you know, continuing to diversify the faculty at ECC, as well as the leadership. You know, for decades, this is a Latinx and minority serving institution with, I think it's about 54%. I'm not sure where it's at because we've lost a lot of students that are minority, yet there's been for decades, there's no representation on the board. And I think it's important for students to see qualified, you know, people that look like them in positions of leadership at the college. And that's part of, you know, the inclusion.
And
Excellent.
part of why we're here.
Yes.
Exactly. Thank you, ladies. Excellent job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jackie?
Well, I'd like to, I think we've answered a lot of questions and we have gone through the chat. So I would like to take this opportunity for Adriana and Professor Fountain to talk about why they're running and more about their campaign. Go ahead.
Okay. I am running. I'll give you the full story. I retired about 15 months ago. I had some wonderful plans for myself as a retired person, and then COVID came. And I've been in the house a long time now. And it's given me lots of time to think and consider. I served for 20 years on the school board for School District U46. My passion, the areas that I choose to become actively engaged in are areas around young people. That's my passion. That's my commitment. And there had been a number of people who had asked me in the past to consider running for a seat on the ECC board. And quite frankly, I just kind of blew it off. I was like, I'm retiring and I'm getting out, yay. Upon reflection and talking to people who I respect and people that know me well, and as I spent time, it seemed more and more plausible. And so I'm running, this is my community. And I know that for various reasons, not all of us can do all things. I have the background in terms of being on a school board. I have the background of having spent 10 years as a staff member, 20 years as a faculty member. I've won all kinds of awards, including awards from students. And they continue to be my passion. And then I finally said, yeah, I'm gonna give this a shot. I'm interested enough, I care enough, and I will attempt to fulfill that role. At one of our forums, the question was asked by a student, did the board members feel that there was a need for diversity on the board? And the answer was no. And so, again, that kind of reaffirmed my decision.
Adriana?
So in my case, you know, I love students. I'm an educator. I've been teaching for 20 years. I had every grade between preschool and high school, I think, over the last 20 years. And, you know, I really believe in ECC. I love the college and the pivotal role that it plays in our community and the opportunities it provides our students. And I really, you know, I would like to be a strong advocate, continue advocating for my students at the college. I have probably hundreds of students over the years that have gone on to ECC or their parents. Right now, I'm actually teaching a dual language kindergarten, so I have parents that were at ECC. And, you know, I'm a strong advocate for working families. So I've been very involved in our union. You know, I've been a member the last 20 years and in leadership the last 7. And represented our union at the state level and also the national level with NEA. I was elected a delegate for Bernie Sanders in the 8th Congressional District and cast my vote for him in 2020. You know, I really believe that education is a human right, you know, as well as healthcare and a lot of other things. And, you know, I believe that kids should be able to get their education and come away, you know, debt-free if possible or as close to that. And, you know, I love the community. I've grew up in this area. English is my second language. I learned English in kindergarten in U46 51 years ago. And now, you know, 51 years later, I'm teaching a 2-way dual language. So I have students that don't know any Spanish, whose parents want them to learn Spanish, which normally in a normal year that's not in a pandemic, the kids would walk away reading and writing at a level D in Spanish in kindergarten in 8 months. It's really hard right now because we don't have the immersion. You know, they could just turn around and talk to their parents in English. They're not stuck with me for 6 hours. And so, you know, but I also have Spanish speaking students that are learning English, which is where I was, you know, 51 years ago. You know, again, I love education. I love students and just want to continue advocating for them. So.
We have your website in the chat for people who want to go to their website.
Thank you.
I'd like to turn it over to Ellen Young now for our call to action. Yes, Susan?
It looks like Ruth has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
I just have a quick question in walking for Joyce and Adriana, because we've been walking and hanging lit, and you definitely have my vote, and I'm really hoping you women get in. But the question that was asked by one of the doors that I knocked on was, and Adriana, I put this in the chat, I didn't see a response, but I'm sure you probably didn't see it, was if you guys are still active teaching in ECC, that was this voter's question. And then he wanted to know, would it be, conflict of interest if you were on the board? But I got lost in some of your details, Adriana. So that dual language class is not for ECC.
No, it's in U46. And he's right. It would be a conflict of interest. So okay. Joyce is a retired professor from ECC, no longer teaching there. And I work at U46.
That's so very helpful. Very helpful. Thanks. But I do question. Thank you.
Sorry.
And, that was one of the reasons why, I, like Joyce, I was asked to run many years ago, but, as a single mom with 2 kids and just trying to make ends meet, this is like a part-time job, but it's a volunteer position. It's a 6-year commitment. It's not paid, and even just the campaign part is a part-time job. So it's not something that I could have afforded to do back then, and now like all the pieces kind of came together. I feel like I have the skills, the background, the experience, and I'm an empty nester now. So I actually have the time. So there it is.
I also see Sue Broxham has her hand up.
Yes. Well, thank you, both of you, for running and for stepping up and for helping us to get the connection, to get out to our friends in the community. So yeah, we have been sharing signs. I'm wondering, is there like an email that you could create and share with at least this group, and we could amplify with our immediate friends who are in the district but didn't know about tonight or couldn't come to tonight, just to share your message in an email?
Sure. So the email they could use is Joyce-Adriana 4 ECC@gmail.com.
Okay. So I think what I'm actually, hold on one second. What I'm actually asking is, do you have somebody who can write a blurb for you that we can share as a PR type of email, like that you create and share with us, and then we get it on out there?
Okay, yeah, if you could just give me a detail like what the blurb is for.
Honestly, I'm just thinking of friends who I know I can share your Facebook page, and maybe that's what we should do, is just each of us share with our friends your Facebook page, and okay. That would be.
And so we also have a letter, right, Joyce? The letter that that Clark created that has a little blurb about each of us, and it, so that you can share with friends and family, and if they want, they could pass it along. Just to get out the vote type
exactly
thing. Yeah, I'd be happy to. I'll email that to you if you want to put your email.
There was also a flyer with candidates on it, and both Joyce and Adriana were on that flyer with their information as well.
We will get you some info.
Awesome.
Okay, let me take a look at the chat one more time. Okay, so we're going to be putting this town hall out on the YouTube channel and reference it to the social media and website for We Can Lead Change, so people can go back and see that as well. So I'd like to move on to Ellen to close our town hall off with our call to action.
So thank you both, Joyce and Adriana, for stepping up and running, but also for coming tonight and helping us understand more about what's at stake. And for all of us who spent the time tonight and learned and gained, we ask that you continue to learn more about these standards. And then when you feel confident, please reach out to your school boards and tell them why you support these standards and why they're important. Talk to your friends and neighbors. Lauren Underwood always says, own your cul-de-sac, own your neighborhood. We need to do that for these standards if we're going to make change happen. And we want to make sure that all students are safe to learn and can thrive. Please vote for candidates like these two women who support diversity, equity, and inclusion. And thank you guys for coming.
My pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Sue, did you have a question?
I think that's a clap.
Oh, is it a clap? Okay. Thank you. All right. Good night, you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for coming on.
Great job.
Nice job, Jackie.